Did KSI go too far with his remarks about Deji after his split decision loss against Alex Wasabi? Now, I'll give my opinion on this right now because he didn't go too far. If anything, he wasn't like, Deji, you suck. Like, he was more of like, you're just not good at all. And he was honest about his opinion, and he sort of went in, but isn't that what's required? Isn't that what he's supposed to hear anyways? Because now the main thing is that Alex Wasabi was like, okay, why do you have to post this online, and why can't you tell it to him instead of telling it to your audience? First of all, the reason KSI is probably doing this is because Deji probably wouldn't listen to him if KSI said this to him. Because Deji, like, from what we know, if he hasn't been training hard for 3 fights and he never learned his lesson, he seems to be a bit arrogant. So KSI probably knew that, okay, Deji's not going to listen to what I have to say, so I'm going to tell it on my YouTube platform, and that's the only way he's probably going to listen to me, because he's not going to listen to me to my face, because KSI said that he wanted to run 5K with Deji, and Deji didn't listen. So it's obvious that Deji doesn't listen to what KSI has to say. So KSI knows if I go to him and tell him, it's the same thing. So I'm going to say it to my audience, and I'm going to say it, and he will end up watching this. And this is something that he can watch on repeat and repeat. Because if he meets him in person and he's like, okay, he says something and Deji doesn't listen properly, and Deji forgets about it. But this video, it's just there for Deji to listen to repeatedly if he wants to improve and box again. So I don't think it was too far. If you lose 3 fights in a row, it's not too far. And each of his opponent got easier. Jake was a tough fight, right? So he got his respect for that. He fought an easier fight, which was Winnie Hacker. Lost that. And an even easier fight, which is Alex Wasabi. He lost that. So at this point, it's like, is there a line? Or I believe KSI can go as far as he wants because it's his brother. How many of you have siblings? Like, we all argue with each other. We go even more further than what KSI said. So KSI is a very, he's very open, right? There's no filter. The way he is on YouTube is the way he is in real life. So he doesn't have to put a filter or pretend to say something he doesn't want to say. He just says it how it is. There's no filter on him. So a lot of people that have brothers, and if they lost 3 fights in a row, and KSI is the guy who hasn't lost a fight yet. He hasn't had much fights, but he hasn't lost any fights, and he's had tougher opponents, and he's managed to win. So obviously, if KSI can do it, he believes his brother can do it because he says that his brother is more gifted than him. So he's just letting him know you have all this potential, and you're not doing shit with your potential that you've been given to, that has been given to you. So it's obviously frustrating for KSI, for him to see 3 times this same outcome. I mean, obviously one, he got stopped, the other one also got stopped, and then the third one is one win the decision. But it wasn't impressive at all. It was almost like he just didn't want to get embarrassed. That's what it seemed like. Deji's main outcome was like to not get embarrassed. And I know it was a split decision win. I mean, for Alex, but it wasn't split. It was a unanimous decision win for him. It's because it was in the UK that the judges really and the people really wanted Deji to win, where they gave it a split decision. That was in no way a split decision. Alex Wasabi won almost all the rounds for that, right? It's the same thing like with Kenny and Face Temper, where Face Temper won, but they gave it to Kenny because it was his hometown. And this is what happens when you do events and you don't take care of these small things properly. Because KSI said he could throw a better event than that for free, right? So obviously they just got a random ass judge, and the whole thing was sort of like a circus event, right? A guy like jumping in the in the ring during the main event. So that shows it wasn't a professional event. So that means the security isn't going to be professional, and that also means that the judges aren't going to be professional. So in my opinion, if Deji wants to fight, let him do it, right? Who are we to tell him not to do it? It's his own decision. The one thing that KSI said was that why are you telling the people if they want to see you fight, right? After his loss, they're like, it's up to you. In that thing, I have to defend Deji because, first of all, let's say everyone said no, right? Everyone said no. Now, an event needs to make money. So if there is no demand, there is no sponsor. If there is no demand, there will be no event thrown because there's no point, because no one's going to watch it, right? So Deji had to ask to see if there will be demand, if tickets can still be sold. Because if they can't sell any tickets, there's no point in fighting. You might as well upload it on your YouTube channel like a sparring match between you and your opponent. Because if you're throwing an event and no one wants to see you fight, why are you doing it? Yes, it could be for yourself, but if no one wants to see you do it, how are you going to get people to sponsor the event, and how are you going to get tickets sold? So it was a case of if people are still interested, so that they would buy tickets. So then sponsors are still interested in paying Deji and paying the others, or whoever his opponent would be, to fight him. That was the reason he asked if they're interested. Because if there's no interest, the event won't be happening, right? There are a lot of events that they fail where you overpay the fighter and then the event gets like 1,000 pay-per-view buys, and then all of a sudden it's a massive loss and people can't get paid. And you know, the YouTube versus TikTok boxing, something similar to that, where you overpay fighters and you say you get paid XXX amount, but the pay-per-view doesn't do well. And then what happens, right? So there has to be demand for him to fight again. He can fight again, even if there's no demand, but then he has to pull his own event where he's willing to take a massive loss in terms of money and lose a lot of money just to win this fight. But he wants to know whether people are still interested, so that people will pay to see him fight again, because if they're not going to pay, you're not going to get any money. So that was the reason he said that, and that's understandable. But in terms of losing 3 times, that's unacceptable. And especially when his brother is the way people think of his brother is so highly in terms of fighting, music, and then you have Deji, where it's sort of been the opposite because of how his career has gone, right? So for Deji, if his next opponent, I don't want to see him fight Stromedy. I heard that Stromedy is interested, but no one wants to see that. You either fight Joe Weller, but I don't think that'll happen because Joe doesn't really want to put 100 to boxing and stop whatever he's doing, because he said in a podcast that they would have to pay him the amount that he's willing to cut, because he's going to cut away everything and just do boxing. So I think the perfect opponent is Bryce Hall. Both of you have lost your fight. Go in and fight each other. And I don't think Bryce is such an easy fight, right? He's kind of like a dog. Like, he got beat up by Austin McBroom, but like, he wasn't like giving up. He was still walking forward. So I like that. And then the fact that Deji's pretty technical. He was technically good in the fight. He just didn't throw. So we're going to have to see a more technical side of Bryce if he wants to win. And we're going to need to see a more dog side of Deji. So we're going to need to see what Deji doesn't have, which is his dog mentality. And we're going to need to see what Bryce doesn't have, which is a technicality. So if they both improve on those each aspects and they fight each other, I think it would be a massive pay-per-view.